so much for joining us today, Joe. All right, so we'll start with where did you grow up and what is your connection to Williamsburg High School?
Grew up near, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Grew up near, in between Cosgrove and Oxford, Iowa. I went to Clear Creek High School before it was Clear Creek, Amana, and graduated in '74. And there was a young lady working at a restaurant next to the gas station that used to be at the Oxford exit that must have been desperate for a boyfriend because she went out on a date with me, and that was almost over 50 years ago. And we've been married for 48 years, so it's through Tammy Rohret, who came to Williamsburg. She went to Williamsburg, and that's where I came. After we graduated, we moved near Parnell, and then after 13 years, we moved here to Williamsburg. So that's my connection. It's my wife.
All right. So what motivated you to join the Air Force?
You could probably say I needed a job, but that was not it. I wanted to fly. I had my private license, but I wanted to fly. And you can ask any of these brave people down here, you don't go into the military to get rich. At first, maybe I thought I would, get airline and all that kind of stuff. You go into the military with a higher cause. You may not know it at the time, but you're doing it for a higher cause. And I went in, and back in the day, and some of these folks may remember, as a second lieutenant pilot, you made $13,200 a year with flight pay, and that was before taxes. So you didn't get rich, but you got a great education, you got a great experience, you had a great camaraderie with people, and you knew you were serving something that was a lot bigger than you, and that was it.
All right, can you expand upon the timeline of when you started in the Air Force to your retirement? What was going on in the world at the time?
The Cold War, we were at war with Russia, and in the Strategic Air Command, flying a tanker or a bomber, you were in a building, one out of every 3 weeks you were on alert, and that meant you went to a building, lived with your crew, and there was 6 crews, you slept there, ate there, and you had to, for the tanker, we had to be airborne within 4 minutes of this, I'll call it a fire alarm, we called it a klaxon. We had to be airborne within 4 minutes of that klaxon going off, and that was due to the fact that where we lived, and I'm saying Tammy, we're at Ellsworth Air Force Base, it was going to be a crater in about 10 minutes after we took off. I mean, if that was a nuclear war. So that was going on. And then we had, and again, my comrades in arms participated in some of these probably. We had Grenada. We had the Panama, where we got Mr. Noriega. We bombed Libya. And then we had Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Operation Northern Watch, which we kept all the airplanes from flying in Iraq. Then we had Enduring Freedom, the Iraq War, Afghanistan, and of course 9/11. It was all going on at this time. So it was a very dynamic time, and you guys can all read about it, but I think the biggest one was 9/11. When 9/11 hit, there was no politics, none of this. It was just, we got attacked at it worse than we ever did, even at Pearl Harbor, and that kind of just cascaded. But the war on terrorism, I went from the Cold War to the war on terrorism, so it's been busy.
Can you describe some of the responsibilities you had as a commander in the Air Force?
You were in charge, with the help of your senior enlisted, you were in charge of, for example, in the 9/11 Air Refueling Squadron, I had 12 KC-135s, and I had 125 pilots and co-pilots and maintenance folks. You're in charge of their lives. In Afghanistan and in Qatar, especially Afghanistan, you were sending people out, and you knew they could not come back. So you did everything you could to protect your people, giving them the best training, giving them the best equipment, giving them the best intelligence, so they didn't get shut down, and making sure that their families were taken care of. When I was the Air Refueling Squadron commander, Tammy she wasn't told to do this, but she did it. The wives, taking care of the wives, and taking care of it means trying to keep them informed on what's going on. But you took care of your people, you had a mission, everybody knew the mission, everybody knew the dangers, and then you tried to lead by example. And again, I had great enlisted partners, I'll call them, they were underneath me, but that helped me help them. But again, you had a mission, you trained your people, give them the best equipment, and send them out to do their job. But it was trying to keep them safe, but knowing that safety was, as much as you can do it.
Can you tell us about one of the more challenging experiences of your career?
We were going into Kyrgyzstan with the vice president, and this was right after Russia broke up, and we were I'll back up. We were going into South Africa, taking the vice president down to Nelson Mandela's inauguration. And one of the African colonels, white, wasn't happy that a black man was going to be president of South Africa because of our apartheid. And again, you can study apartheid. And he had a shoulder-fired missile that he had stolen, and he was going to take out a blue and white. By that he meant we had 3 aircraft going down there. The first one had congressional leaders on it. The second one had the First Lady, and the third one had Al Gore. We had Colin Powell. We had Jesse Jackson, and some other folks that you probably really don't care about, those 3. And we were going down, and before we left, we had some folks, I say can't come from downtown, they were from the National Security Agency. And they said, put the aircraft in the landing configuration. So we put all the lights on and lowered it, and they said, it'll be a face shot. And what they meant by that was, if he fired a missile, it's heat-seeking, and we had some kind of protection if it shot from behind us, but if it shot in front of us, it was going to hit. He said, it'll be a face shot. So the first 2 airplanes landed, and here we come. And so I told the crew, the crew in the cockpit, and I just happened to have Colin Powell sitting in the jump seat. I said, we're not turning on any lights. We're not telling, if the tower asked what's our position, because it was right at dusk, tell them we're 3 miles from where we're at, behind us. And I was weaving my way down final, and we finally at 200 feet, where the missile wouldn't hurt us, we put all the lights on and landed. But that was one that was challenging. The last one, I'll have to tell you, I did my last landing at Andrews, and Dulles Airport, International Airport was closed, Washington Airport was closed, BWI was closed, but Andrews happened to be open because they were all closed because the winds were so strong. I have my hero of my life, John Glenn, sitting right behind me, and God landed the airplane. I'm not that good. It landed, and it landed perfectly. And he's tapping me on the back saying, that's great, that's great. So that was challenging and rewarding, but the trip into South Africa, knowing that somebody's trying to shoot at you, and you have nothing you can do about it, was probably the most, I'm not saying scared, but it was nervous, until I landed.
Will you please share with us a description of a rewarding moment in your career?
When I left Kandahar, Afghanistan as commander, having gotten my folks out of tents, having built an infrastructure, because I was in charge of the whole airfield and who came in, who came out, who went out. When we left Afghanistan, we left Kandahar with buildings that they could go in, the runway was redone, all kinds of new stuff put up to help people get in there. When I got there, we were in tents, it was terrible, you couldn't land on the runway sometimes, it was so rough. But with the help of my Army brothers and sisters, and a lot of great civilians, we built Kandahar up to where it was now one of the major bases in that part of the world. And that was one of the most rewarding non-flying moments. The other one was just watching, I'm going to call them the kids, just move up through the ranks. Watching kids that were second lieutenants and you said, there's no way in God's good green earth this person's ever going to get anywhere. Reach high ranks. they did more than they ever thought they could, and that's the challenging part as a commander, to get them to do more than they think they can, because they can. And again, with superiors, enlisted folks helping me, that was also one of the rewarding things, is seeing those that you have underneath you move up through the ranks.
So last week we had a presidential election, and you have had the opportunity to fly vice presidents and U.S. officials. What did that teach you about the U.S. government?
I don't want their job. We were scheduled at Andrews by CNN. If something happened, we flew. And with Al Gore or the other senior people in government, they're like us, kinda, but the challenge is they have so much going on that really the senior folks have just about that much knowledge of what's going on. It's all the other people. When we took Al Gore somewhere, if it was overseas, he slept all the way over, did whatever Al Gore did. And his staff worked the entire way over, and then they worked when they landed. Our government's fine, regardless of how you voted, it's fine. And in the military, and again, these folks will say it, we can't run out with these uniforms on and vote and go to a rally or go to a some kind of a thing. You can't. It's against regulations. You can do it, I guess, in your civilian clothes, but you better not get caught making a scene. But what we are is this government, the way the military is, we are controlled by a civilian government, and that's great. It's great, because it gives us direction. We don't have to worry one way or the other. It gives us direction, and it kind of puts a little bit of stability, regardless of who's in there. It puts a little bit of stability there. I'm going to say it, and I probably should be ashamed of it. I didn't vote for like the first 10 years I was in the military. It didn't matter who's there. And then you figure out, yeah, it does matter. Every vote matters. But our government is so unique in the world that when it changes hands, regardless of who it does, the military is still there. It's still stable. It's still protecting this country. And like the person said, that young lady that said, we're not, the first people that hate war is everybody here and their families. We hate it. If it could be peace all the time, it'd be wonderful, but that's our job, is to keep that peace. And sometimes you have to go to war. But yeah, I'm not worried about what's going on. And like I say, after hauling those folks around, I don't want their job. And they do have a great responsibility. But if they leave, there's somebody else coming in just as capable. They really are, and you don't have to worry. We're not going back to some other kind of government. Our government's really stable.
What is one lesson that you hope high school students will take from Veterans Day?
One, thank these folks. You don't thank me, but thank these folks. A young man back in 1961, in January, gave a speech on a cold day in Washington. He was the youngest person ever elected president. It was John Kennedy. And I don't remember what he said in his inaugural speech except for this. And each of my comrades down here and their families know what I'm talking about. You hear too much today of what can I get from the government? What can I do from here? What can I do from that? And back in 1961, on that cold day, this young man, who was a World War II vet, who was wounded in combat, who was a real hero, he really was, said, don't ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I think everybody sitting here and their families, and all of you out there that have relatives that are in the military right now, or have had any military experience, that's why we did it. I mean, we may not have said it, we may not even have known it, but as we went through our military careers, whether they be short or long, it was, what can I do to make this place better for the people behind me, for the people we live with now, but for the people behind me. And it's that core thing of, what can we do for our country? And it may be, you may be turning a wrench on a truck in Afghanistan thinking, I ain't doing it. darn thing. Or you may be a pilot, a fighter pilot, or a bomber pilot, or a technician in a hospital. What am I doing for my every little job? Every single job has a purpose to the cause. Every purpose. If you're on a ship, if you're out and about hunting people down in the mountains of Afghanistan, or flying above them. Every position in the military has a job, and those people, they whine about what's going on, because they have every right to whine, but they're doing it for a higher cause. And you do not get rich, I'm sorry to say, folks, in the military. You're not going to get rich, but you're going to have something that nobody else has, and that's the experience, what am I trying to say, the discipline to go on and do other things. And the military gives back. You get an education if you want it. You can learn skills if you want it. You can change skills if you want it. I was talking to Warrant Officer Garing here. I mean, he went from a hospital technician to flying airplanes. I mean, and here I am, a rec major from Iowa, flying airplanes. You can do whatever you want if you want to, but you all have a purpose. And John Kennedy nailed it on the head. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Do you have any last parting words for us today?
Stay in school. Don't shun the military. There's everything on the internet now is so crazy. Think about it. After 9/11, we had people coming out of the walls, coming back from retirement, doing everything. God love them. And it probably was the same way after Pearl Harbor. But don't shun it. Consider it. If you don't know what you want to do after high school, consider the military. Whether it's, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, a civilian job. Thousands of those too. But consider it. And I'm not trying to be a recruiter here. For heaven's sakes, I'm the last one who could do that. But consider it. Because even if you only stay in 3 or 4 years, you're going to have so much more than a kid that just got out and tried to maybe go to college for whatever degree. Consider it. Because it does give you something. And you may need to consider it a lifelong ambition, that's fine. But just consider it. And I ask not to put people down. You don't put people down that are considering it, because it is. It's a higher calling. Whether you know it or not, it is. And it's something that's deep inside you that's calling you to do that. So, again, stay in school. But consider it. You don't have to go to college to go to the military. You do if you want to be a pilot in the Air Force. You have to get a degree. But there are so many opportunities for enlisted folks to go into the military and come out with training and knowledge and pride and discipline that they may not have had before. So, one last thing. Thank you for being here. I think everybody down here in the front row and their families would say thank you to each and every one of you. Because seeing you up here singing or seeing you here sitting in the seats gives us hope that this country is in good hands. Regardless of what you read on the internet, we're in good hands if we have seeing you up here, seeing what you do for vets, and we thank you for this every year. It's amazing.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.